All right, so we're going over the pericardium, otherwise known as the heart protector, as well as the triple heater. The heart protector is interesting. So in chapter 8 of the Ling Shu, when they describe the officials and list them, heart protector or PC, pericardium, is the resident and envoy, and it's said that elation stems from it. Elation and joy stems from it. So pericardium, like all the other officials, has yin aspects of it and yang aspects of it. It is the resident and envoy. So it's a little bit like the Secretary of State. So it does do some work at court. It supports the role of the Supreme Controller, and it tends the Supreme Controller when it's at court, right, or in the body. And then it also is the envoy, which means it goes out into the kingdom to circulate the will of the Supreme Controller to all the other officials. So it has two different aspects. It has, as it's known as Tanzong, right? Tan means the center, right? The middle. That's that square with the line through it, right? And that means the point from which an influence will spring up and radiate out, right? This is the center, right? So the Tang is this, the Zheng is the center. And then the Tan is the sort of like this altar that is at the center, right? So you have the Zheng, which is the center, right? Tan Zheng. And then you have the this elaborate image of an altar in the center. It's interesting that when you combine the right side of the character for Tan with the radical for tree, you get sandalwood, which is like this sacred tree whose color is reddish purple like blood. And this is the herb or the wood that's burned in sacred rituals. And so the idea is that like attracts like, right? So this idea that the foundation of primitive magic or sympathetic magic, or the earliest rituals to supplicate for something important, to extend an attitude of gratitude and worship, right? They would use only the most very sacred things, right? So in the very beginnings, they would use blood or things that resembled blood, or whose smoke would alter one's state, right? Even in the Catholic Mass, like, for very special masses like Easter and things like that, they burn frankincense and myrrh, right? And I remember being an altar boy when I was younger, and you breathe in a lot of that smoke. It kind of not make you like high, but it puts you in a slightly altered state, right? So I think it's interesting that you combine the word altar with tree and you get sandalwood. So it's a yin organ, so it tends to store, and it's solid. So one aspect of the pericardium is the Xin Bao Lo. Xin, heart, Bao, like wrapping, right? Bao is also the same term used for uterus, which is the wrapping of the fetus. And then Lo is the network. So the Xin Bao Lo, let's look at my notes here. The Xin Bao Lo refers to that muscle around the empty space that is the heart, right? So the Xin represents Wu Wei, non-action. It represents not doing nothing, but more about emphasis on being rather than your doing, right? So there's times when we're more about the doing, and then but also everything that we do has to be infused with the quality of our being, right? And so if what you're infusing into your labors and your work is completely resonant and harmonic with your inner authentic nature, then it doesn't feel like you're efforting, right? You're not engaging the small self to try and make something happen, to try and manage something. And it's an inner state that's characterized by ease or lack of ease, right? So when you're not, even if you're like working hard at the garden, or you're playing music, or you're engaged in sports, or engaged in some activity where you're so into it, you're so present that you actually lose awareness of your conditioned self. And there's nothing but a sense of flow. And that's Wu Wei, right? And so this is one aspect of the pericardium that allows the heart to be, but to be in the world protected, right? It doesn't have to stay secluded behind its screen on its chrysanthemum throne, inside a throne room, inside a large palace, inside a forbidden city that's walled, right? It can actually be out in the world and still be safe and protected, which is why vulnerability is such an issue for the pericardium. So we'll get to that in a bit, right? So it does its job so the heart official doesn't have to leave its protected place in the center on this sacred altar, right? The pericardium can do that. It can be the resident, that is, it helps at home in the court and supports the supreme controller in what it does, but it also then circulates throughout the kingdom, sort of carrying the decree of the emperor or empress, so the emperor can stay safe, right? And what it circulates is the Shen, right? That's the heavenly decree from the supreme controller. That's your Shen, because your Shen is circulated through the blood. That's the envoy part, right? It sends the Shen, which is the decree of the heart, to every cell in every part of the body, mind, spirit, right? So that's the envoy part. It carries the Shen through the blood to all four corners of the kingdom. So every cell of your being actually gets the decree about how we must be in the world and how we must do our work, but also infused with this quality of self-awareness, right? That's why we have muscle memory, right? That's why we have body awareness, proprioception, right? I don't have to learn to write anew every day. I can get in my car and I know already how to operate my vehicle, right? I don't have to learn how to do all that stuff. We have muscle memory, we have it in our bodies, right? And then the Bao, again, is the wrapper, the protector, right? And then, so that's the muscle that surrounds the empty spaces that we now in the West would call like the atria and the ventricles, right? And then the Lo refers to this network of vessels that extends out from the heart, right? This is all the circulatory vessels, right? The veins, the capillaries, and the arteries. And that's the vehicle through which the pericardium can transmit the decree of the supreme controller, right? So as a resident, it's the Xin Zhu, right? The heart ruler or heart master or heart governor, right? So it's the envoy through which the heart commands, right? That's how it does its work in the court. So that deals with the chest, right? That deals with the center area, right? So that's very important in terms of regulating the heartbeat with the heart and in support of the lungs, right? This is what's, also allows us to be fully present, right? Because the heart just is, it just radiates this Shen luminous awareness, right? But then to put it into action and to be present in a way that helps us to understand things, right? That's the heart master. Okay. And it does that through compassion, right? Let me see here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so in chapter 35 of the Ling Shu, I was looking for this note. The Tanzong is the imperial palace, this area here in the center, from which the heart commands. So the Xinzhu, right, the heart master refers to two things. The master heart is the organ that's centered in the chest, and the meridian that carries out the functions of the organ, and the chi in the whole being, right? So that would be the channels of the heart and the pericardium channels that run through the arm that help manage the day-to-day functions of the heart and the pericardium. Because again, until at the time of at the Neijing, I think it was like maybe around the Song Dynasty it was added, the heart only had no channel because it was considered to be too sacred and too sort of primal and deep to be accessed in a mundane way. But then so there was only the pericardium channel, and then the heart really only was represented by one point, and that was heart 7, right? So it had no heart channel, I think, until in the Song Dynasty, when they decided, actually, yeah, we can, we might have the capacity to access the heart. And so that's why the pericardium and the heart have the exact same number of points. And that's why the points actually line up, with the exception of the first 2 points. They kind of line up, where actually the first point kind of line up in the similar location, right? Not the exact, but similar. But of course, the heart 7, 6, and 5, and 4 are really close together. And you wonder, like, well, why would that be? Because the heart is precious and needs to be protected. So that's why it's crooked up, really close in this very kind of protected space, right? So if like we have our, hands and arms moving, like this area is kind of shielded, right? So they're all close together in a very shielded, sacred area, right? So there's 2 aspects, just to summarize, there's 2 aspects to the pericardium, right? There's the Shinju, the heart master, right? Which works with the heart and is expressed and accessed via the points along the channel, the 9 points on the channel, that help it do its daily functions in the daily management of the kingdom. And then it's also the Xinbao Lo, right? The heart protector that wraps around the heart and keeps the heart safe. And then as well as like through its Lo, the network of vessels, right? Through the circulatory system, is the envoy through which it distributes the decrees of the heart throughout every cell of the kingdom. Okay, so there's 2. It's interesting because there's 2 aspects to it, right? The Shinju, the heart master, and the Xinbao Lo, the heart wrapping network, right? So this network is said to, again, they didn't have the same sort of technology to understand a lot of the like when they do examination, postmortem examinations of the body, right? But they sort of imagine like that the muscle around the heart, all the vessels kind of extend from that, almost like the roots that come from the root ball of a plant. All right, does that make sense? Right. So this is why the pericardium shows up and manifests clinically as it does. There's a quality of these gates, right? You've probably heard about that, right? And they're represented by pericardium 6 and triple heater 5, inner frontier gate, outer frontier gate. So this Xinbao Lo, right? It's not just a completely sealed off wrapper, right? It's not impenetrable, right? Through its connection to the heart, it knows when to like open the gate and to let people into this intimate space in our life, psychologically, maybe even physically, emotionally, and when to sort of keep people out, right? And the heart kind of knows immediately in a millisecond who it can trust and who it can't trust, right? And there's going to be people where you feel more open to, you just feel warmer towards, and there's people that you feel wary of and you feel a desire to protect, like they might be up to something. I think they might try and take advantage of me, right? So there's, and hopefully with your loved ones, if you have a close relationship, when you're around them, you're more open and exposed. You allow them to see the more private, intimate aspects of you, right? And then around certain strangers, we close off. Again, Li propriety, governed by the fire, governed by the heart. who is appropriate to let in, who's appropriate to keep out, right? It's not because you have a lack of compassion for them. It's just because they haven't earned the right to enter and be near and dear to our heart, right? That has to be earned over time through our relationship. And that's how the triple heater helps us to connect and communicate and to be in some kind of harmony with the people around us. And it takes the temperature, and then that communicates to the pericardium, and then that communicates either to the small intestine or the heart directly and says, yeah, I vouch for this person, they're safe, right? And that's why the pericardium, as part of the Jui Yin pair, right? Hand Jui Yin is pericardium, foot Jui Yin is liver. That's why when our intimacy and our trust, when violated, when taken advantage of, can lead to a lot of rage and anger, right? Because the liver, its job, as you recall, is to defend life, right? And part of its job is to defend this intimate space that is moderated and managed by the pericardium, right? The heart protector, the Xin Bao Lo. So that's why, there's a mixture of sadness and anger, either towards self. Sometimes we judge ourselves for trusting someone who then took advantage of us. Maybe someone betrays our trust. Maybe someone cheats on us or cheats us out of something, or gets close to our heart and then says something or does something that upsets us, that violates our trust, our loyalty. So there's sadness and then there's anger. And there's almost always a mixture of both. And then depending on your constitution and your nature, you either direct it inwards or you direct it outwards, right? When we direct it inwards, we tend to close off. We tend to not trust again. We tend to be cold, right? Because that circulation isn't vibrant. That circulation isn't infused with so much Shen. The warmth is diminished, right? Or you might develop like a resentful chip on your shoulder, and you might develop more of what's sort of like an offense is the best defense strategy. Like I've been watching this series called Suits. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but there's one character named Lewis, and he's a great example of a pericardium. Like all he wants is to be loved and respect. I mean, he says respect, but it's really, he wants a partner. Like he wants he's a lawyer. It's about these lawyers. And he wants an associate to be like a Robin to his Batman. That's that partnership. I need a partner. I want somebody that I can, go do these extracurricular activities with, and I can be a partner with, and we can be kind of connected as a team. And then, but a lot of times, his old wounds, when he was picked on as a kid, he was bullied a lot. So sometimes he'll lash out and strike first when somebody offers friendship, and he doesn't trust it because he's been burned before. So then he goes and does something to kind of screw over the other person before they can hurt him. And then they confront him and reject him. And then he's back to square one, right? So this is how wash, rinse, repeat. This is how a lot of pericardium CFs go through life. They were oh, let's be friends, but I'm worried you're gonna screw me over. So I'm gonna do something to get one over on you. Then you're gonna get upset about it. Then you're gonna withdraw and reject me. And now I'm gonna be alone again. So then I try even harder to reach out and become friends with people, right? So that's that quality of the heart protector. It's not connected to the Shinju, the heart master, which is getting its decree from the heart and getting its guidance and marching orders, as it were, from the heart, and really taking care of this internal space. And then that luminosity, that's the irony, is by doing nothing, actually allowing the luminosity of the heart to shine through you and your pericardium, you'll actually attract more people. So it's actually the harder you work to get friends and people in your circle, the more repellent it becomes. You have to kind of trust the Wu Wei. You're just going to radiate out, and you're just going to, it's the law of attraction, right? And then you just have to trust that you're going to attract the right person towards you that you can then be friends with, right? dating is like the same, right? Dating is sort of the same. If you really try hard, like that, that desperation is felt and it becomes repellent. It's like this, it's too hot, right? And we can all feel it when somebody's like trying too hard to be our friend or to date us, right? It has a quality to it that's unsettling and unnerving. The irony is if they just relax and just be themselves, they would attract the right person who's attracted to them, for them, not this facade that they're putting on that's trying to impress people, right? So this shows up a lot with pericardium. So if you've never seen Suits, like watch like 3 or 4 episodes of Suits with this guy Lewis. He's the absolute perfect pericardium CF, right? He's just like a puppy, like, please love me, like, or a cat. All right. So just a brief review on the body system. So the body, there's no sort of corresponding organ itself, but we could understand the heart protector of the pericardium as the muscle that surrounds, i.e. protects the empty spaces of the atria and the ventricles, right, within the heart. And Georges Soulet de Meuron wrote this book. He was not an acupuncturist. He was not a medical professional, but he spent a lot of time in China doing ambassadorial type work there. And he wrote this book on Chinese medicine. He was really fascinated with Chinese medicine. And he termed the pericardium the circulation/sex official, which Worsley did adopt in his 5-element poster. You'll see like there's sort of a block at the bottom of the poster with the listing of the officials. And it has like, the name of the official and then a sort of nickname. And this was the understanding that the pericardium or heart protector official, the Tanzong, assists the supreme controller in the circulation of the blood via the veins, the arteries, the capillaries, right? And therefore the concurrent circulation of qi and shen to every cell in the body was under its purview. And then it's circulation/sex official because it said that the Tanzong is what supports the flow of blood to the penis that allows the erection to occur, which allows sex to happen, as well as the circulation and abundance of vaginal fluids and secretions that allow for ease of penetration for the sex act to occur and to facilitate fertility, right? But that was more of a kind of a modern convention. But if you run across that, just so you have a sense of like where that's from. So it's, in a sense, it's responsible for all the internal and external sexual secretions, including the blood, again, that fosters the erection, as well as the vaginal secretions that facilitate intercourse. So when you have patients that are dealing with like sexual issues, erectile dysfunction, excessive dryness, vaginitis, it's not just about the liver, it's not just about the wood element. It also does include functions of the pericardium and to some degree triple heater, right? We'll get to the triple heater in a bit. So just be mindful of that. And also, as we know, via the 6 divisions, the pericardium is paired with the Jui Yin, the liver via Jui Yin, and the triple heater is paired with the gallbladder via the Xiao Yang, right? You guys learned those, right? Yeah, you're experts in the 6 divisions. You got that down. All right. All right. So in terms of the mind, the pericardium is said to transmit the tender feelings of the supreme controller. And this is what fosters emotional warmth and intimacy towards yourself and towards other people, right? And so the oil that greased the skids is compassion, right? Love. And like all aspects of the fire, it has a natural radiance, right? So when we are deeply connected to the supreme controller, when we're deeply connected to our heart, our compassion then radiates outward without any effort. Just like there's no effort in the light bulb to radiate light. It just turns on and then it radiates. I had an interesting experience with an acquaintance of mine who's an actress, and she's sort of like medium level fame. And when you're out and about with her, she's not the kind of person, she's not like like I don't know, like Charlize Theron or something, where like, or I don't know, name a famous actress, like, whoever's like, who's famous these days? I don't know.
Margot Robbie.
Okay, Margot Robbie, right? So, you're out in Margot Robbie, everybody's going to be like, got their phone and like, filming you, and people are going to be taking your pictures. Like, she's not that level. Like, she's like, some people recognize her and some people don't. But she did something once really early on. We were out having dinner, and all of a sudden she's like, I was like, it's amazing that like, you don't attract a lot more attention. She's like, because I have it turned off. And I'm like, what? She's like, I have it turned off. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I sort of like go through this sort of ritual where I shield myself. I was like, huh. And she was like, so watch. So when we left the restaurant and we were walking down the street, we were in New York, she's like, I'll turn it on. And like, it was really weird. Like, you look at her face and like something just sort of like shifted in her face. And like, I could feel like emotional warmth in her presence. And then all of a sudden, like, people would recognize her on the street. It was the weirdest thing. And like, because I used to be work in the film industry. And so I would talk to other people about that. And they're like, oh yeah, like we all have some version of that. And I think that this just, like the four of us, we don't have that. Like we don't have that. As charismatic as you all are, we don't have that. There's some people that are just born to it. And I think that that's what motivates them and moves them towards that business, right? To be like an actor or an actress or a performer. They have that which allows them to turn on and off is probably rooted in that very thing that guides them to be in the arts and to be a performer. And it's really wild. I was having a conversation with Richard Gere when he was in Baltimore. And it was really interesting. Like in the beginning, like he just has this insane presence. I mean, it's just like, holy crap. Like you can feel his Shen bubble, like from 10 feet away, 9 feet away. And he's like this, it's almost like when they talk about putting a glamour on somebody, I mean, it really felt like he was like 10 feet tall and just had this like a massive presence. And we started talking about Buddhism, and all of a sudden I felt his presence shrink to like normal size. And all of a sudden I was just like, oh, I felt so much more at ease, because I'm not normally like someone that like gets starstruck, but like I was really, I was like self-conscious and like nervous when I first started talking to him. I mean, I was like, there's a part of me go like, Time, what the hell is wrong with you? Like I was so nervous and self-conscious and just suddenly aware of like every pore on my body. And am I sweating? I feel like I'm sweating, like it was awful. But maybe he knows how to like recognize people who are just like, right? And so like, as a sort of a gesture of compassion, this is all in my head. I didn't ask him about this, but my sense is pretty good that he kind of turned it off and shrunk himself and just made himself like a normal person. And I could palpably feel myself relax, and my faculties kind of came back, and I could like string words into a coherent sentence, and we could just have a conversation. It was really fast. And I had a really fascinating conversation with him about Buddhism in the United States. So that, I think that sort of star quality is moderated by the triple heater and the pericardium. And we all have some version of that, even if it's just like a minute version. Like Richard Gere was like 10 out of 10, like me, 1 out of 10, But we all have some ability to kind of open and close. And it's not about like sealing ourselves off like an armadillo, or like going into our shell, like a turtle. It's not like that. It's more like there's a certain quality of availability and vulnerability. And that's what it feels like. And it's felt as warmth, as degrees of warmth. And when we talk about the triple heater can get so hot that it actually like keeps people at a distance. And I think about certain more yang type entertainers, like comedians. Like there was a guy named Sam Kinison who gets up there and he yells, right? Like you don't want to get close to that guy. Like how close do you want to get to that guy? He's screaming at the top of his lungs, right? Or oh, I can never remember his name. Ryan, you reminded me of his name. He died. He killed himself so he wouldn't die of Parkinson's. Robin Williams. That's it. Thank you. I got your transmission. Right? Like he's not an easy person to kind of like. That's not like a quiet, comforting fire in the fireplace. It's like this blazing, right? Huge, fire. So that's the continuum that you feel, and you'll feel that as warmth, personal warmth in someone's presence. And that's the quality of the radiance of the Shen. And then there's a certain quality within that quality that is felt as compassion. So if you're around somebody that doesn't have any compassion for others, chances are they don't have much compassion for themselves. So their fire officials have been damaged. Right? They may radiate a lot of charisma. They may radiate brightly, but the quality of the brightness does not, just how light transmits information. That which is transmitted by that light, that's the qualities that you develop in yourself. Right? So in someone's presence, you may feel like more aware of issues around integrity and honesty, right? Or acknowledgement and righteousness, that's metal, right? Or that's the Shen Po, right? Or more about the qualities of fairness and justice, right? And you may feel a sense of conflict in their presence, but and again, it may not be off-putting, but you're just sort of like aware of it. And that's the Shen Hun, right? We must evolve. We must lift all boats. We must be fair and just in our dealings and equitable. Right. So the Shen, right? Because there's the Shen Hun, the Shen Po, the Shen Zhi, the Shen Yi, right? But the Shen, right? The big S and small s Shen, the Shen of the heart spirit it radiates compassion. It radiates this quality of acceptance. The sun shines on everyone, saint and sinner alike. The sun shines just the same on mass murderers, right? And thieves as it does on, people that do great works, right? And are committed to goodness and kindness, right? Right? The Dalai Lama gets the same sun you and I get, right? He doesn't get extra sun, like, right? So that's that Wu Wei radiance of compassion that's connected to the heart. So if the Xinzhu is damaged, the heart master is damaged, it doesn't radiate compassion. It doesn't radiate Wu Wei. It doesn't radiate luminosity and oneness. It radiates something else, right? All right. Do we need to take a break? A small break? 4 minutes? No. All right. Let's break till 1:15. All right, 9:45, we'll come back. So on a mental level, the pericardium is said to transmit the tender feelings of the heart, right? That's the aspect of the charge that elation and joy stem from it. So elation is the more yang, warmth and happiness, right? This is like the exuberant happiness, right? And then the joy is like the quiet, warm satisfaction, good feelings, love, right? That joy is like the contentment and love that one feels that is like really quietly warming and nourishing, okay? The elation is like, oh, this is like the more uproarious laughter and exuberant happiness that I feel with other people, right? This is like when you're more like out in the world, right? So it gives us the capacity, along with the heart, to experience sincerity. And that's why there's a part of us aligned also with the liver that kind of is like our BS detector, right? There's this natural resonance when somebody's speaking to you. You can tell when they're sincere or not. Now, again, some people are really, sociopaths, psychopaths, they're really good at fooling people because they can deeply believe that the lies that they're telling. So it's not perfect. Sometimes we just get fooled. But for the most of us, we have this sort of ingrained truth lie detector where somebody, like, we feel the sincerity of someone's words, right? And then that touches our heart and that moves us, right? And so that provides a clue as to how the pericardium and the triple heater need to communicate, and communicate they must. Can I provide a video example representing each of these fish? So, like, I'm not sure what you mean by, like, can you provide video examples representing each of these officials?
So you're saying that each of these officials has like a quality of personality to it,
Yeah.
right? So just like you mentioned with the, I'll check out the
Lewis in Suits.
Lewis in Suits. I'm saying for pericardium and for triple heater, is there one for triple heater that's kind of like?
Yeah, let me think about that. I would say like people like Jim Carrey or Sam Kinison or what's his name? His name from Moment to Moment. It's Robin Williams. I don't know why I cannot remember that dude's name. It's so funny. They're good examples of triple heater where they're very young, they're very exuberant. And I would say in a positive host way, that would be like your ultimate party host that kind of like flits around, from like group to group within a party, make sure everybody's having a good time. They might drop a certain comment that makes people like laugh, or they'll say something or compliment somebody in a way that like makes them feel warm and loved, right? Yeah. So so the pericardium and the triple heater help us to experience and to recognize sincerity, as well as empower our just ability to be kind of emotionally vulnerable as well as rugged, right? And this is where the pericardium works with the liver, whose main substance it works with is the blood. Now, it's in charge of the smooth flow of chi and blood, and the smooth flow of everything, really, of everything in the body, the smooth flow of everything. Any fluid in the body that's moving, any substance in the body that's moving, chi, blood, jinye, everything, and emotions, it's all about the smooth flow. But the liver uses blood to facilitate its functions. And so this is why the liver and the pericardium allow us to be emotionally rugged. Blood, as you recall, allows us to experience the blows of life with comfort and grace. And later on, when you maybe you have me in the 5th trimester for point functions class, but liver 1, which is the wood point within the liver, great esteem, dadun. One aspect of esteem shows a lamb with its throat cut. I know it's a little gruesome, but the lamb is willing to sacrifice itself. And I don't want to get into like socio-political aspects about animal rights and all this stuff. I'm just talking about like metaphors in the natural world. Like sheep, goats were used in a lot of sacrifices. And there's a whole reason why that is, but suffice it to say that they're relatively docile animals, right? That are relatively easy to catch, because our spiritual community has sheep and they're not easy to pen, but you can get them, you can catch them in an enclosed space. So there's this quality of like, I'm willing to be sacrificed. I'm willing to sacrifice for the ritual. And the ritual is about supplicating for something greater, right? And so this aspect of pericardium and liver together combine to make this to what emerges from that is this sense of loyalty, just like the pericardium is so loyal to the supreme controller. They're willing to lay down their life for that. They're willing to allow their throats to be cut. They're willing to bleed for this supreme controller, for the emperor, the empress, for the most high, for heaven, right? So like, you know, like we say, like, my heart bleeds for you, right? You know, something like that. Or like, oh, they're a bleeding heart liberal, right? It means they're like, sort of implies that they're weak. But the willingness to sacrifice for someone else, right? I mean, Melvin, you know this in the military, right? I mean, it's all about the person next to you, right? I mean, it's all about the team, and, you know, and you're willing to, and, you know, thank God for it. Like, you guys are willing to lay down your lives. I mean, it's not preferred, but you will. It's not how I want it to go. But like, if it comes to that, I'll do it. If it comes to that, I'll do it. And there's this quality of pericardium with the liver that says, you know what, I'll,
Guy,
yeah.
is that the righteousness?
It's not about righteousness. It's not about because I'm right.
Okay.
Although the
Maybe
liver,
something more.
because the liver will provide that. I mean, the liver, like wood CFs, they want to be right.
What I'm talking is because in Chinese character, I don't know how you translate into the English. It is a righteous, probably, but it's more than righteous, meaning it's more like a sacrifice. Because
Yes,
the word
yes,
itself has lamb on top and
yes,
meat at the bottom.
yes,
So that is a sacrifice for the right.
yes,
Oh,
yes. So for yes, yeah. Not righteousness as in like the purity of metal, but yes, in terms of like making things right and equitable, and to defend everyone. Like for the concept that like for a cause, let's put it that way. Yes, the righteousness for a cause. Like we put the cause or other people above us. Yes, that's a great point. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to walk into the library, so
Okay.
I'm going to close my camera,
Okay.
but I'm still listening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
So there's this quality of blood that gives us a sense of emotional ruggedness, right? Blood allows us to take the blows of life with comfort and grace. So there's quality of emotional ruggedness. And then also on the flip side, you know, we feel easily violated. Our rights feel easily violated. We feel like we're very easy to take offense that someone is treating us unfairly, maybe even before we have like all the facts, right? I remember when I first moved to New York and I made the dumb mistake of holding the door open for a woman. And oh my God, this chick just laid into me. And I was so stunned, I didn't really have a snappy comeback, because it was just like, you know, when the dog is confused and it just goes, oh, right? That was me. I was just the German Shepherd just going, oh, ¿por qué? Like, I was like, what the hell? And then later on, I realized, like, you know, like this, I'm not weak. I don't need some man to, it was just crazy. I was like it was a phenomenal education in 8 seconds. So that's that quality of like, you know, we you know, again, the wood aspect of taking things personally, like this takes things personally to heart, right? Like if somebody like, so again, it's all about forgiveness, right? So pericardium and liver use the blood and the qi to some degree and infused with the shen to be aware of the whole aspect of what's happening, to gauge the sincerity of the other person, and to really assess the circumstances. Like, was this person really intending to be offensive and directing something at me, or were they just being a schmuck, right? Or were they just being ignorant? Were they just being unaware, right? You know, there's times on the highway you may have been this person, or may it's happened to you, where like somebody goes to change lanes, they don't see you, and then, you know, you beep or you let them know, and then you know, when you drive up next to them, they're like, sorry, you know, like, don't shoot me. Like, you know, they didn't do it on purpose. They weren't being a jerk, right? It's like, so that your capacity to then be forgiving, that's your pericardium working with your liver, right? You're not going, I'll show you, or you give them the finger, like you're clearly missing that they're sorry that they made a mistake, right? But you're so blood deficient and you're so wounded that like you take it personally, you take it to heart, and it really upsets you, right? And so then the next time like somebody goes to like they put their signal on, they're like, screw it, I'm going to speed up, I'll forget them, like, because I just got screwed over, so now I'm going to like be less forgiving for you. These are all things you see this all the time on the highway. So the pericardium gives this capacity to be emotionally rugged, and what allows that is the blood. The blood gives us the capacity to like kind of let it like roll off like water off a duck's back, as they say, right? And then in terms of the deeper spirit of it, this is the pericardium with the heart gives us the capacity to recognize who's deserving of our intimacy, who's deserving to be let into this deepest of inner chambers, this inner sacred sanctum, where we trust them with like our most valuable secrets, our most valuable aspects of ourself, right? Our most private thoughts and feelings, maybe even past experiences, right? So this there and it's moderated by love. It's moderated by love, right? What opens the door is love. And what lubricates the opening and closing of that door is the quality of the blood. And then the Shen gives us the capacity to understand when to open and when to close. And it will do this naturally without really any calculated thought on your part. I remember one time I walked into this store. It was a men's clothing store, and which was really interesting. Like later on, the wife of the guy who ran this huge clothing store chain ended up being a patient of mine, which is kind of funny. Like years later, I walked into the store. I was with my girlfriend. There's nobody else in the store. I walk in, and there's this guy behind the counter. I'd never seen him before in my life, but something just, I don't know, like just kind of came over me. And before I even knew it, I wasn't even like really aware of what was happening. Like he held out his hand, and we kind of like clasped hands, like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Like, I just instantly felt like doors opened. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't attraction. It was just like kinship. It was like something I couldn't explain or articulate. It happened in a second. It obviously happened with him too. Like in 5 minutes, we were like best friends. It was crazy, right? That's the pericardium. It doesn't require a lot of intellectual thought. It's just an impulse. And this is why it's very easy to be attracted and sleep with other people when you're drunk, right? No one's ugly at 2 a.m. So again, because our judgment is impaired, it's like, it's just open, right? That's the tequila, right? So we have to be mindful of what disturbs, interferes with, or corrupts our Shen and our capacity, and the triple heater's capacity, along with the gallbladder, to discriminate, because we should discriminate in a good way for our safety, right? I discern for whatever reason, like I sense that this person may harm my heart, that may wound me. Now, again, that's healthy and physiological. Pathological discrimination and prejudice is when the mind comes in and imposes its story onto the outer world and onto other people, and comes up with BS stories based on one's own wounded past. And that's all projection, right? Like, well, tall people intimidate me, so I'm going to walk up and like, I'm going to be like really aggressive to keep him like, or her at bay, right? Or like people that look like this, right? This is where a lot of problems occur that result in, again, liver gallbladder getting involved, also like infused with the fear of the kidney, we feel threatened by people that we're not familiar with. So we impose our story on what that other person is like, and we're not getting the true story. So that's when a lot of unpleasant, violent discrimination and prejudice occurs, right? Based on people's gender, skin color, culture, the way they dress, right? The things that they like, don't like their culture, right? So that's when the pericardium and the liver have become, the Shen is distorted. So what radiates out is not compassion, not a desire to open and close appropriately, but a desire to close and then be aggressive. Does this make sense? Right. And that usually comes from, and again, if the water that's feeding the wood, which then feeds the fire, is rooted in fear and paranoia, that distorts the liver's ability to assess the circumstances and the gallbladder's ability to judge and discern. And then that guides us into how do I interact and socialize with the people around me. If I grow up to fear Greeks, right, and I meet someone and their name is, Edward Mamonopoulos, right? I'm going to be like, oh, I don't know, right? It's not because you're assessing circumstances appropriately or you're connected to this person and you're assessing the quality of warmth and connection. It's just you're stuck in this distorted experience. Does this make sense? So the pericardium allows us to step outside our comfort zone. And this is what it means to be an adult. And we'll talk about this more in the 5th trimester in the point functions class. The Taoists look at 3 sections. They divide the 12 officials up into 3 sections of 4. And this is about the first section, lung, large intestine, spleen, stomach, is about survival, right? I can breathe, I can eat and drink, and I can survive, right? And then, after that comes the I'm blanking out. Heart, small intestine, bladder, kidney, which is about how do I relate to my culture, my family, the context of in which I develop, right? Like I grew up, East Coast, Maryland, Baltimore, Roman Catholic family, blah, 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 right? So that, and then, these characters were in my family and this is where I went to school and this is like the environment of my school and development, right? So this is how we learn to kind of socialize. But then after that is the pericardium, triple heater, gallbladder, liver, and this is about individuation. So this is when we kind of mature and become ourselves. Like I learn who I am as an individual. In the first, we learn kind of who we are in terms of our context, right? I mean, when I was 5 years old, I was a Baltimore Colts fan. I didn't like carefully examine all of the teams in the NFL and through, tremendous research, assessment, and analysis decide, yeah, the Baltimore Colts are going to be who I root for. I was a Colts fan because my old man was a Colts fan and because his old man was a Colts fan. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, I was an Orioles fan. Why? Because my family was Orioles fans, right? Right? I mean, you're 5 years old. What the hell do you know, right? I mean, you don't know anything. Or you might see some picture of something and you're like, oh yeah, that, right? I'm going to be an astronaut, right? Now, but at some point, you learn what's moving inside of you authentically from your heart that then moves into the pericardium, triple heater, liver, gallbladder, which is how you develop as a distinct individual within the collective, right? And so this is why the pericardium is about coming up against those places that are no longer harmonious with our conditioning, right? Like a lot of my extended family was very racist. But as I grew older, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like it just didn't feel right. I'm sorry, I just can't, I just don't, I'm not buying it. I call BS, right? That people with like, Chinese people or, people from different cultures with different skin colors, like I don't know why, like it's just in me I just can't make a lot of negative assessments based on that. So at some point you kind of rub up again, or like, you're taught like men are like this, women are like this, blah, 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 right? And you're just like, well, that doesn't feel right to me. And so now you're at odds with your conditioning. And so this is why the pericardium, along with the triple heater, gallbladder, liver, allow you to make sense of the world based on what feels right to you. And this can put you at odds with your culture. It could put you at odds with the times. It could put you at odds with your religion, whatever your culture is, right? Whatever your cultural larger family group is, right? And so you need blood to give you the esteem to open your heart and say, you know what, I'm not going to just immediately dislike this person because of their skin color or their nationality or their gender. I'm actually going to be like more open to that and connect more to the compassion and the quality that lubricates the connection with these other people, which then leads to a sense of unity, right? So it's like the heart is about unity of everything, but then the heart, as we develop, the pericardium and the triple heater and gallbladder, liver take that understanding and innate knowledge of unity and then personalizes it and brings it into your daily life, right? Like the heart like allows you to, okay, like when I'm with my set, like I can be at one, but now you have to be sort of like, how much is that oneness really worth to you? You might have to take some blows of life, from other people. You might take some criticism or rejection from other people because you're like, no, actually, I'm not just one with the people like me. I'm really one with the people who aren't like me. And, you could take some shit for it. Right? So blood is what allows us to take it, right? To take the rejection, to take the criticism, right? And keep drawing that circle larger and opening and closing appropriately, right? To protect that inner sanctum, which is, I guess, like Wang Su, like what you're talking about, that righteousness, which is like that sense of what is deeply right. That's worth my love, that's worth my shen, that's worth the work it takes to maintain a meaningful, intimate, warm, loving relationship, right? So that's the pericardium. And when you feel heartbreak, when you feel hurt, when you feel wounded, the good news is that's not your heart. That's your heart protector. So when you feel that, like, people are like beating on your heart protector gates, the good news is that the heart protector is doing its job, right? My very first patient in clinic came to see me. He was 51 and he was approaching the age, he said his father died. His father died at 54 of heart disease. And he said his father's first symptom of heart problems was sudden death. Like that was like the way he said it was like deeply unnerving to me in the moment. And this guy was like a total fire CF2, and he was overweight and he liked to do like mountain climbing and stuff like that. And he came in for knee pain, and I was thinking, I'm either going to kill this guy or I'm going to save this guy. So, but like insidious onset, right? That's no symptoms, right? So like we're not paying attention to the pericardium and the triple heater. So then we allow the disease to penetrate that place that shall never be penetrated. And that's when our life ends, right? Everyone dies of the same thing. No matter what the cause of death on your death certificate, everyone dies of the same thing. Your heart stops beating. It's the cause of death in every human being that's ever lived and ever will live. Your heart stops beating. Right? You know, when you die in the hospital and they revive you, where do they put the paddles? They don't put them on your temple. They don't put them on your rear end, right? They don't put them on your back. They put them on your chest. Why? They have to restart the heart. They don't shock your head, right? They don't like smack you. They paddle your heart. That's the thing. Like that's the heart protector is saying like, I'm with you till the end, heart. You're my boo. I'll take it. Whatever comes, I'll take it. I'll stand in front of you. Again, like the liver, that defends life. Pericardium is very loyal. The pericardium part of you is the one that's like willing to like take a beating for your buddy, you know, even when they're wrong, because anybody could be friends with someone when they're right. It's really hard to be buddy, you know, stick up for somebody when they're wrong. Yeah. All right, any questions about the pericardium? I've just subdued you into submission with all the information. All right, let's talk about the triple heater. And we're going to have and I'm sorry, Guangsu, but you know, you're always welcome to sit in on the Thursday class. I know you already had it, but what was it, the clinical observation class? Did you have the panels and stuff? Did you have like the elemental panels where people came in representing the different CFs? Okay, yeah. So we're at pericardium and triple heater next time. And I want you to really pay attention to the difference in the room between 1 and 2 and 5 and 6. It's really different. It's very different.
Sorry, what time is this?
It's on Thursdays at 3 o'clock from 3 to 4:20. And you're absolutely welcome anytime. We're usually in room 5. Yeah, yeah. So the triple heater, the San Jiao, right? It's responsible for the opening up of passages and irrigation. And what stems from it is the regulation of the fluids. So what does that mean? So if I remember, I'll upload onto Canvas. There's this thing called the interstitium. It's this sort of like body structure that was recently discovered about like 10 years ago. That's like this sort of layer of ducts, D-U-C-T-S, not D-U-C-K-S, ducts in the fascia and that transmit fluid. And it's like really tiny. And it's sort of like what the triple heater does. The triple heater uses the body fluids to be, it has sort of a number of different functions. One of its functions is to be like a thermostat, right? Both physically as well as psycho-emotionally. It allows us to take the temperature of the exterior to then moderate the temperature of the interior, right? So if I'm outside, yesterday it was 101 degrees, right? If I'm outside, how would my body, how does your body regulate its temperature?
But
Yeah, sweat to cool off.
You sweat to cool off. It's not the water that cools you. It's the evaporation of the water that cools you, right? And then as Melvin just gave us an example, he's drinking water. So there's internal and external, right? Demonstrated, that was the word I was looking for, right? So we use fluid to warm and cool and to regulate the warm and cool. And then it said that the sweat is the fluid of the heart. Because if we have a fever, fire, every element and every officials within those elements have external pathogenic factors that are particularly harmful for them, right? So for the metal, it's dryness, right? For the heart, it's heat. And all the heart's officials, for the fire officials, it's heat, right? You know, the water element, it's cold, right? The earth, it's damp, right? Wood, it's damp and heat. And wind. So if you don't want to get so hot that you get overheated. Has anyone ever been like so hot or had a really high fever? Anybody ever have heat stroke or a super high fever? How did you experience? What was your experience like? What did you experience? What did you feel?
Blacked out.
Yeah, right. Well, that's really severe. I mean, oh my God, that's like
So
redlining.
so when I came to short and quick,
Yeah,
all I did was came open to like a movie restarting.
right.
You know, my eyes opening, and next thing I blacked out again, and next thing I woke up in bed of ice.
Yeah. So before you black out, though, there's a stage of that lasts different periods of time, which is delirium, right? This is so what Melvin is describing is like the end point, the Jungian end point of delirium, which is unconsciousness. You're so out of it that you're completely out of it, that you're all of your orifices are closed. You are unconscious, right? I am unable to sense and be aware of anything. I remember I had this like super high fever. It's like 105, and I was alone in my row house, and I was like so delirious. I was like, my friends were saying, you called me up and we're just babbling. Like, thankfully, one friend kind of figured out like I was in serious trouble, and he came over and took me to the hospital. But there's delirium, right? So like heat is destructive. It scatters the Shen and makes us nutty. And this is why mania disturbs the heart. So this is why clearing heat is so helpful for the fire officials. And so that's why the sweat is the body fluid of the heart, because that is what allows us to cool off before we get so hot that we get delirious and the Shen is disturbed, and then the heart is affected, right? And then it goes into that vasovagal response where poof, we just go out, right? So we can reset. And just like Melvin described, like I felt like it was in a movie, restarting. You're resetting your Shen, right? So in order to avoid that, we sweat. That sweat evaporates, that cools us off, right? That's how an air conditioner works. An air conditioner pumps out cool air because it's drawing out the moisture, right? It's regulating. It's like the anti-sweat, right? The thing is sweating, like, because if anyone's ever had, like we had, in our apartment growing up, we had 2 window units, right? And anybody ever had like a cheap air conditioner? What does it do?
Drips on the floor.
Drips. Oh my God, that's the condensation, right? So the air conditioner is sweating for you, right? That's the sweat. So that's why the triple heater is so effective at regulating hot and cold via the fluids. It circulates the fluids and it moves the fluids in or out of various structures to regulate our temperature. And it also is the most yang of all the fire officials. So that's the one that makes like first contact with our environment to give us a sense of like, how do I read the room, as it were, right? What's the emotional temperature of the room and the people in it, right? Kidney walks in, wants to see the most powerful person there, right? Pericardium person, either like, where's the corner where I can go and drink quietly by myself? Or, like, who looks the most inviting and warm, right? Triple heater, they scan like the whole room and they just take it all in, and then they have a sense of like how to be in the room. So that's the spirit of the triple heater. It creates harmony between the interior and the exterior by regulating the network of animation, which is the fluids, via the water passages throughout the 3 Jiao, right? So and in so doing, it regulates the quality of fluids in the 3 Jiao. So in the upper Jiao, it should be like a mist. In the middle Jiao, I love how they call it like a maceration chamber. So for those of you who don't know maceration, when you chew, what your teeth are doing, that's macerating. It's a quality of like grinding. So this maceration chamber, it's sort of like if we imagine like having a gizzard, but it's really more about creating a soup, right? Just like the stomach creates the 100-degree soup, whereas 100 is code word for hot, right? So the acids are macerating the foods, which break it down, right? So it can be absorbed, right? So the middle Jiao fluids should be like this soupy fluids, like not as thin as steam or vapor, but not as thick as the lower Jiao, which is like a sluice stitch. This would be like the gutter. These are like the sewers, right? So I think we can all, I don't think I need to explain much, right? I think we can all get the vivid image of what moves through sewers and the thickness of it, right? Anybody who've ever had like a gray water tank, right? Oh God, it's just horrid, right? It's like this super thick, nasty fluids of waste, right? So the triple heater is responsible for regulating the quality of the fluids in each of the 3 Jiao, right? So as it opens up the passages for irrigation, this is the force of the water which creates the passages in the ditches to control the flow, right? So this is like irrigating the crops. And that allows for harmonious communication between all the different officials, right? So it not only regulates the fluids, but how the fluids flow. And then there's a certain quality and timing, which is assisted by the gallbladder. And if you think about the blood is part plasma, right? Which allows it gives it a certain viscosity. The viscosity of that blood flow is under the purview of the triple heater. All right. And so the circulation of the fluids allows the body and all its different parts to be in communication with one another. So if somebody has really cold hands or feet, but the rest of them is okay, like that's a triple heater issue. Right. All right. So again, the upper Jiao, like a mist, this is the fluids that emerge from the fermentation of the gu qi, right? And from the digestion that goes up. And so, the spleen qi ascends the clear, right? So that becomes the mist that helps the heart and lungs function. And then with the stomach rising up some turbid, that goes to the wei qi, that becomes our wei qi, right? And so on a spirit level, this would be like a quality of like light, right? Illumination. Like we get a little bit of a mist, we can breathe that in, right? That sort of like moistens just enough for things to be like nourished and calm, right? And so this is like sort of like the more heavenly fluids, right? And that relates to that which gives us a sense of lightness. And then in the middle Jiao, this deals a lot with the qi, right? And this allows us to experience harmony. So one of the biggest relationships in our system in terms of our digestion is between the wood and the earth, right? In fact, there's something called sudden turmoil disorder, right? When the fluids are going up inappropriately and down inappropriately. This is when you're vomiting and you have diarrhea simultaneously, right? So, the ability for us to experience ease of digestion rather than indigestion or acid reflux or GERD or feeling bloated and sluggish and tired, right? That's about the harmony. So the middle jiao is about harmony. And then the lower jiao, which is about expelling the waste, all of the thickest fluids, the most impure or turbid fluids, right? That we need to manage to get rid of, right? That allows us to experience purity. That's more about like the body, right? Our lower nature, okay? This would be like our compulsions. The middle jiao would be more like our egoic desires based on our conditioning. And then the upper jiao would be like our inner divine nature, right? And so the triple heater manages all of that, as well as managing the yuan qi. That is, so you've got the kidney yin and yang, you've got the Ming Men fire, right? That's the combination of yin yang, kidney yin, kidney yang, and essence. And that is said to turn into, like when all of that mixes together, that turns into like this essence chi that rises up the spine and then is deposited into the AEPs, the associated effect points, right? The back shu points, to all the different officials. And then what transports it from there to all the source points around the body is the triple heater mechanism. So it is responsible for regulating and distributing the yuan qi, which allows us to access the yuan qi at the periphery. You don't have to needle GB4 to connect to the yuan qi. You can connect to the yuan qi via the source points, because the triple heater is doing its job at transporting the yuan qi, this original qi, to all the source points of the officials. So that's why it's said to create harmony among the whole kingdom. So that's one of the biggest themes of a triple heater kind of person, dominant person, will be harmony and communication, right? Because in order to create harmony among all the different officials, it has to be transmitting something, which is and that's the essence of communication, right? If I want to communicate to you, I need to be transmitting something out, and then I need to be able to assess how that's landing, and I need to be able to take that in, put that through me, and I go, oh wow, everybody's like, they're looking confused. Maybe they look angry. Okay, maybe I'm not saying the right thing. I'm not explaining myself, or I'm saying something inappropriate, right? So I need to be able, with the gallbladder's help, I need to judge how my communication is going. So that's how the gallbladder and the triple heater work together. And that's why when somebody's not experiencing harmony or good communication, it's very frustrating. And so that's why they can be like, okay, I'll do more, I'll do louder. Like, have you ever noticed, like, maybe you've noticed people like, I thought it was funny because I travel internationally occasionally, and I see people interacting with, I see like people from other countries interacting with the people from that country. And what's interesting is that, like, if person A is speaking to, like, let's say Australian A speaking to Italian B, and Italian B is not understanding Australian A, what does Australian A do? They talk louder. I'm thinking to myself, they're not deaf, they just don't speak Australian. Like, so there's this impulse to be louder, to be more yang, to be, I'm going to transmit more, right? And then that doesn't work. That doesn't work, right? So just like if you're not getting, like, if you ever, I don't know if you've ever been like on a date that's just like not going well, and you can tell you're not harmonizing. What do you do? Like, you have different, like the triple heat, what the triple heater will do is to try and be funnier, or to try and be more personal, or to try and share more personal stuff. But they'll try, right? They'll try. I'm going to give you more warmth. I'm going to give you more heart and heart protector. And what usually happens? Oh, it's so sad, right? So, right, you can't. So just like if there's not good circulation in the hands and feet, the heart can beat harder and faster. The pericardium can, open more, but that doesn't necessarily make that doesn't necessarily facilitate communication if there's some kind of blockage in the meridian system, in the vascular system, into the hands and feet. It just, so what builds up is pressure, right? And then the triple heater, it does sense that it's not getting through, that harmony is not being achieved, that warmth is not being transmitted back. So they can get angry, they can get frustrated, they can get hurt. And what do? They try harder. More gestures, love bombing, right? All that stuff. And it's just like, nope, it's not, their pericardium is closed, man. Like, just stop. So for fire CFs, like being rejected can be real for like somebody who's not cultivated their officials, like rejection, like turning your back to them. That's like the worst. When I was in college, one of my jobs was to sell door-to-door siding and window treatments. And in the old days, we had these booklets of paper with lots of lines on them called maps. It was really cool. And so we'd be assigned an area and they'd highlight it, and you would go door to door and you'd pitch the person about like vinyl siding and vinyl window treatments, like in new, windows, new window treatments and things like that. And so, as you can imagine, a lot of people slam doors in my face, right? And one day I just decided, you know what, I'm not gonna like try to put on airs. So I just dressed normally. And my friends and I, we were all punks, right? So we had leather jackets and like crazy t-shirts and multicolored hair. And we were just like, I was just like, screw it. I like, they're either gonna like open or not. Like, so, and it really was just a matter of attrition. Like even me, like wearing like a Sex Pistols shirt and a leather jacket in DC, white guy in DC, like knocking on doors, I did really well because I just wouldn't BS people. And I learned something really interesting, which is a real triple heater skill. I learned how to match. So when somebody opens the door and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to go, hey, how you doing? No. Somebody opens the door, goes, yeah. I'm like, hey, how you doing? This is my name. I'm representing this company. We're in your area. Right? You know what I mean? You match them, right? So I'm not trying to insinuate myself past their pericardium and triple heater, right? I'm matching them, and that creates greater harmony. Now, I'm not saying it worked all the time, but it worked a lot. It was a really fascinating education on the triple heater and pericardium, as well as other things, right? So, you learn to take rejection, you learn not to take it personally. You learn to have doors closed in your face. You know what I mean? So like growing up, we all have some version of that where we feel, where our pericardium and triple heater is challenged in some way. We're rejected, we're not liked, we're maybe made fun of, we're, exiled or whatever, right? Where our poor little heart protector has been smacked around a little. Right? But so that's why it's like, well, you either build blood or you don't, right? And that's what makes you not tough. That's what makes you emotionally rugged and resilient, right? So the triple heater, so in one sense, on a physical sense, it's like the car radiator, right? Or the thermostat in your home, right? Using the fluids to regulate the different areas, especially the 3 Jiao, but it also regulates our desires for connection, for love, for attachments, for meaningful connections, for friendship, for partnership, for warmth, for intimacy, right? So if the triple heater is healthy, we're more than happy to see life as not a war or a battle, but like a sort of a game of attrition. Like I just learned from my supervisor, like, who was like one of the weirdest people I've ever met in my entire life. This guy was just like really nutty. But he was, and even this guy did well. He's like, it's just a matter of knocking on enough doors. It's just like dating. Like I didn't get married till I was 35. Like I knocked on a lot of doors, right? Until I stopped knocking, and then I met my wife, right? So it was like you stop trying, right? So there's this quality of the triple heater when it's healthy. There's this the Wu way of the heart moves through the layers of your small intestine, pericardium to your triple heater, where you have this sort of effortless sort of quality of being where you're open to the potential of letting someone in, but you're not open, like completely open and inappropriately vulnerable. So you're radiating a certain warmth, radiating a certain compassion. Even if you're an introvert, you may move through life not saying 10 words to people in a whole day. Has nothing to do with it. If your triple heater is healthy, you're allowing the warmth of the heart to radiate through the different levels, just like the fluids can regulate and move through all the 3 Jiao and into the extremities. You're allowing that Shen to radiate out and be available to everyone, but you're also being sort of intuitively mindful about who you're going to let in. And it's all effortless. So you could be with somebody who's very exuberant and yang and extroverted. You could be with somebody who's very introverted and yin, but there's still the same quality of openness and warmth and compassion without ever having to say a word. Now, triple heaters are more prone to using words and touch. Pericardiums, less so. So a lot of pericardium CS will tell you, yeah, they've got friends, but they've got a few really close friends, and they're okay in groups because they do get some chi from groups, from an abundance of shens, like at a party. But they really thrive when it's just more one-on-one, or them, like 3 or 4 of them together, right? You can have the bachelor party with like 15 guys, or you can have, like you go camping with your 2 best friends. It's a very different experience, right? So pericardium's more tightly guarded. Triple heaters more prone to be exuberant. Does this make sense? And then one of the superpowers of the triple heater is the ability to create community, because not only are you radiating the light of the pericardium, you're radiating the light of the the triple heater, but also all the fire officials. So you're radiating a quality of intimacy, or the potential for intimacy that's sort of represented by the pericardium. You're radiating the qualities of the small intestine, which is about like integrity and service and lightness of being, and the heart, which is about control, order, the presence of heaven on earth, right? And so what facilitates that, what lubricates that via the triple heater, on the physical level, it's the fluids, but on the psychological or psycho-emotional level, it's the sincerity of authentic joy. And it's felt as warmth by others. When out of balance, that's felt as cold, or it's felt as flat, right? The light is dim. So there's no real purpose to this other than love for love's sake, other than partnership for partnership's sake, other than harmony for harmony's sake. There's the old expression that the heart has reasons that reason knows not. I love that, right? This would be like when you end up like being in a close personal relationship with someone, despite them not fitting like your picture, right? Maybe they have different political beliefs and ideas and persuasions. Maybe they come from a very different culture. Maybe their original language is different than yours. Maybe they sort of like don't look like, you know, a lot of the people that like, may not look like you, right? But yet there's something there that bonds you, right? The triple heater and the pericardium facilitate that. The triple heater facilitates it in the sort of the beginning stages of your relationship, and then the pericardium takes over. It says, "Oh yeah, now, yeah, actually, you know, despite what my gallbladder is saying, like I'm gonna, and my liver is saying, I'm gonna let you in, right?" And it's just like the Odd Couple, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of this TV show, and then it was a movie, The Odd Couple, where, or like the idea of like opposites attract, right? Yeah. So I think you get the sense that, and there's no sort of like rational explanation of it, because the heart doesn't explain things. So this is why like people who like fire CFs, especially pericardium triple heater CFs, they may have a hard time putting their feelings into words, because it's just a feeling of rightness, of sincerity, of resonance, of harmony, of warmth, of compassion, of love, that can't always be articulated. And this is why, you know, love stories, books, movies are so, poems are so compelling, because how do you put into words and visions, you know, and images, how do you put that into words and images? It's like, we will never, ever stop, you know, writing stories about friends and lovers, because there's as many ways of describing it and experiencing it as there are people. And so just the act of exploring that allows us to even feel it more, right? Like, you know, and that's that bonding experience. Like you watch a movie with a loved one or a friend, and you come out, you feel you bonded because you have a harmonious experience. And that's what the triple heater is really about: harmony, communication, connection. So when it's out of balance, you'll feel that in their presence. And that shows up as varying degrees of warmth or coolness, right? That's this way. And then also varying degrees of flat versus like sort of, you know, like the heartbeat itself, right? Like variability, right? Fire CFs that are out of balance are very flat, right? It feels cold. There's not a lot of warmth. The vitality is very flat, right? And the voice, lack of laugh, has a flatness to it. There's less variability. There's no spontaneity. And all fire CFs love to be spontaneous or have some relationship with spontaneity, right? All right. Let me see if I'm leaving anything out here. So just a word about propriety, which is something that figures very heavily into all fire officials, and is another way of kind of assessing whether something is in or out of balance. Propriety may be understood as the spontaneous and accurate way of being that creates a harmonious partnership and effortless flow between our environment and inside, and between our environment and us. The inside and the outside are in a dynamic, harmonious dance. So when it feels effortless, that's the Wu way. So I'll say that again. Propriety can be understood as the spontaneous and accurate way of being that creates harmonious partnership and effortless flow between our environment and us. It's the spontaneous and accurate way of being that creates a harmonious partnership and effortless flow between our environment and us. The inside and the outside are in a dynamic, harmonious dance. right? And one of the things that can show up also, since triple heater is in charge of extending our Shen outwards into the environment, and fire is about the consolidation and ordering of our Shen, i.e. focusing what we're aware of and paying attention to. So when it's out of balance, that can look as scattered and unfocused. And so since fire is about warmth and spontaneity, and to some degree, like, you know, that joie de vivre, right? That and passion for life, an undeveloped triple heater can come off very immature and is easily sort of like distracted by the next new thing, because it's about joy and elation. And on a certain level, that might be like excitement. So this would be like somebody who maybe goes on like 5 or 6 dates, and maybe they're actually a person that's like, they're really right for them, but they start to feel vulnerable and things are starting to get like heavy, deep, and real. And that's not fun. Like, I don't want to be in a relationship where we're figuring out who takes out the garbage and who cleans the dishes and who works on the finances. And, you know, that's a, oh yeah, that's a drag, right? That's not fun. So I'm going to go on to the next new relationship, right? So these may be people who have a hard time committing and reaching a level of maturity, because fire is about maturity, right? You know, we're under the ground and we sprout and start to become who we are and individuate, and then we mature, right? So fire, just like in the summertime, that's when the plants, you know, they've not just bloomed, but they're starting to mature. There's the luxuriant growth that's now not just up and out, but really filling out, right? Like, as you can see behind me, right? The trees, they've matured in the season, right? They're not just little buds coming up or like the first bright green little leaves, right? They've matured, right? So this would be like middle age. But some people don't want to grow up, and some people don't want to experience the boredom of maturity, right? Oh, that's a drag because it's not new. What's new is exciting. What's new helps us to be passionate, right? We're generally more passionate in our relationships in the beginning. Right? So out of balance, people can be hot and cold. They, you know, love bomb you, then they ghost you, right? They're like, they want to spend every waking minute with you, and then they don't return your phone calls or your texts, right? Patients become really enamored with acupuncture. It's like the next new thing. And then, you know, period of times passes and you have to sort of go through like the work of it. And they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. Scheduling, who wants to deal with that? You know, right? So one of the things that shows up is a quality of immaturity. That's people are easily distracted onto the next new thing, can't experience completion, can experience like a maturity and a maturation process. And again, it's combined with the gallbladder wood. So there's a quality of like, you know, moving externally and dealing with growth towards a goal. So this might be the person that's like taking a new workshop in a new area of study, like every other weekend or every month. Like, oh, you know, March, I learned about fertility. And then, oh, you know, and then April, I learned about, you know, orthopedics. And oh, you know, then, you know, oh, Jeffrey Wynn's coming to whatever. Now I'm going to learn about stones. And oh, you know, this person's coming and they're going to teach me about like Shen disharmonies, right? So they're never really able to like bring it all the way in a way that helps to develop them. So that often shows up. And again, think about wind and order, right? My heart's desires are blowing around like the wind. I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm going here, I'm paying attention to there, right? So they may have a hard time focusing. And they run hot, and they can run hot and cold. All right. Any questions about that? No questions about the 3 heater, the Jiao? Um,
So in balance, they would just be consistent with the love they give or the presence they have or the
Yeah.
workshops they're going to.
the radiance of the heart of the harmonious communication would, I mean, it may stop and start at certain times, but it is relatively consistent. It reaches a level of maturity. It's like a fire needs to be tended. You don't just like throw, wood on the ground, you light it and you let it go, right? You have to tend the fire. You have to stoke the fire. What do you have to do? You have to get your hands in there and manage it a little bit to allow some air to penetrate, maybe even put new wood on it. So, because as fire matures, what does it do? It gets more contained. So a healthy triple heater is not going to be so exuberant like a bonfire that you can't get close to it. And that's how they protect themselves from that sense of vulnerability from the pericardium, is they magnify their fire so great that it keeps you at a distance. But then it easily like burns down and out without tending. And that's where the heart comes in and the liver and gallbladder come in, that like allow us to kind of like maintain and tend the growth and maintenance of that fire so it stays consistent, right? Now we now have electricity that regulates our ovens, but before, when you're cooking over an open flame, like to maintain a relatively consistent temperature, you have to be present to it. You can't just like wander off for 2 hours and then come back, right? Which is what an undeveloped triple heater does. And you can kind of apply that to relationships, like that people come and go, come and go, come and go. Triple heaters are prone to that. But if they come and go with enough regularity, if they maintain communication, harmonious connection is maintained. So it's not like you have to sit and poke the fire every minute of every hour, but to maintain that fire, you have to come back to it. It's some regularity. And that's the consistency that you're talking about, right? And we know this, like social psychologists have determined that like you have to put so many hours into a relationship for a friendship to develop. And there has to be over a certain regularity, right? It can't be like a year later you come back and say, hey, how you doing? And pick up, like now there's some friends that you might have had for a long time, but they became friends to begin with because you spent a lot of time with them frequently, like proximity of time and space with regularity that allowed that harmonious communication to be maintained for that fire to be stoked. And then just like, I have a friend that like, I see them like once or twice a year and we pick up like we never left off. Like I remember like she moved away to like Oregon. I didn't see her for like 5 years. She moves back to Baltimore. It was like she never left. But that's because it had been maintained and developed early on, right? Like children, you're with them like every hour of every day, and then they mature and then they grow and then they go to school and then you're not with them for several hours a day. And then they go to more school and then you're not you're outside of you don't see them for 6-8 hours a day. And then they grow up and they leave home and then you don't see them for weeks, months, right? Or they move really far away and then you see them on holidays. But there's an unreasonable connection that occurs via the Shen that transcends logic, i.e. time and space. So someone that's deeply like in your heart, they're, like E.E. Cummings said, like your heart is in my heart. I carry your heart in my heart. You cannot see them for a long time. And then when you see them again, it's immediately rekindled because the fire has never gone out. There's a part of you that's tending that through your memories, i.e. Shen infused in your blood. And it's not logical, it's not reasonable, right? But it is there nonetheless. And this is how like the fire CFs, one of the themes that shows up is like unreasonableness. Like they'll do or say things that just don't make sense because it makes sense to their heart and no one else, right? Like sometimes my parents would look at me like, where the F did you come from? Like, like, right? Or you may have friends where they may do something, like you love them and you accept them, but they do something and you're just like, what the hell? Who are you, man? Like, like, why are you doing that? But you love them nonetheless, but they're doing what their heart guides them to do, and you're just like, okay, I'm with you. I don't understand it, but I'm with you. And so that's the Shen that lubricates the communication and connection that creates harmony. And also then, just like the triple heater opens up the passages as well as regulates the flow of fluids through them, the triple heater breaks through and opens up those passages, differences, right? That the gallbladder judges and sees and assesses. Well, they look different than me. They're different age, they're different skin color, they're different religion. But the triple heater, the force of its Shen, like the fluids on the physical level, the force of its Shen breaks down these blockages and creates connections. And that is empowered by the Shen that radiates from the heart. The triple heater focuses that and guides it with the help of the gallbladder, which gives it a goal. I'm focusing my Shen here, and I'm cultivating this relationship. Why? Because I'm just unreasonably motivated to do that. Now, an out of balance person would do that because of their egoic desires, right? To be adored, to be loved, right? You look at certain political figures, they'll do or say anything to be liked. And the moment you do something that's not in their best interest, the moment you do something that makes it look like you're not completely 100% in harmony with them, they cut you off and they insult you, they demean you, they cast you out, right? I mean, we all see political and social figures like that behave like that, right? And that's, the triple heater working with the gallbladder. Or if they've done something to hurt you and betray your trust, then the liver kicks in, and says, you're out, step back, right? All right, does this make sense? So these are some of the things that, show up. And, at the next panel next Thursday in Guangzhou, again, you're invited to join us next Thursday. We're going to have representatives of the pericardium and triple heater. And I want you to pay attention to how they show up and how different that is from people who resonate with 1 and 2. Again, pericardium, triple heater on a channel level are connected with the liver and the gallbladder respectively, but the heart and the small intestine are part of the Shaoyin, heart, kidney, and Taiyang, small intestine, bladder, and that shows up very differently because water and wood are very different. Yeah. Okay. So why don't we take a break until next Friday at 9? So come back next Friday at 9 and we'll pick up where we left off.
Thanks.
All right. Take good care.
See ya.
All right, see you.